Karate Combat is I would say, very successful use case on Hedera. But wouldn't it be cool if there was 100 of us?
Only LARPing, welcome back after the success you've had in the past few events as one of the masterminds behind Up Only Gaming. You have to be really proud.
Yeah, it was an awesome event, man. You never know how these things are going to go ahead of time. It really went perfectly almost. And then on top of it, we had a huge announcement on the same day. I don't know why we do these things to ourselves. It always seems like a good idea ahead of time, you know. Oh, there'll be so much buzz on KC socials. Might as well announce it the same day. Of course, like when you get to that day, you're like, what the hell was I thinking?
Well, either way, it was an exciting day. I had a blast following everything that was going on. And if anybody's curious about what Up Only Gaming is and what Karate Combat is doing, of course, we had that first interview that we did where we did a deep dive into all that kind of stuff. But I want to talk about that announcement you made around Up Layer 2 on Hedera. Can you just tell us about what's going to launch in the months to come and the strategy behind it?
Yeah, of course. So you asked me what's going to launch in the months to come. We announced on Friday that in Q1, Up, which is a layer two on Hedera, will be launching. I think the strategy behind it, is a longer convo. And I walked through a lot of this in my article. So over the last, year or so, we've had a decent number of projects from really all sorts, all walks of life, reach out to us and say, hey, we like what you're doing with Up Only Gaming. Is there any chance we could use it? We could license it. We could copy it, which is interesting to us for a number of reasons. The more we thought about it, the more we realized how intrinsically motivated we are to spread Up Only Gaming. First of all, like from a broad cultural education standpoint, everyone in the world knows what gambling is essentially. And you could round it down to almost no one knowing about what Up Only Gaming is. A few 100,000 people really understand how it works. We're not going to be able to get Up Only Gaming in the dictionary on our own next year. If we can get 10 or 100 other projects with real fan bases launching their own versions of Up Only Gaming, it can become a real thing in the global kind of like mind space much more rapidly, which would be great for education and marketing and customer acquisition. And then more directly, if we could design the system correctly on our own, we should be able to easily share users with these other sports or esports or whatever projects, right? So very motivated on that front. Also, a little bit, maybe more subtly, from a crypto capital market standpoint, karate is very unique. It's sort of trailblazing, but it's sort of on an island. I think you want to be the first in a category, but you don't want to be the only. You do eventually want that category on CoinGecko for like up only gaming tokens or something like that, right? If you look at GameFi, they have funds, they have newsletters, they have podcasts, they have Twitter spaces, you name it. Up Only Gaming doesn't have any of that. If we can bring in 100 other projects, that will all develop on its own, which would be huge for us. So that's sort of like the intrinsic motivations behind it. Obviously, there's also the way we did it. There's also a financial motivation. We announced a plan to launch an Up token sometime next year, and a large portion of those tokens are going to go back to the Karate token holders, which the founders and investors and contributors to Karate Combat all own a decent amount of. So that's sort of the reasoning behind it.
Well, I definitely want to dive more into that token itself, but a big part of this up, from what I understand, is to broaden the scope of participants by opening up this up-only gaming concept to other networks and communities. Can you explain how that's going to happen?
Sure. So I think when you look at the value prop, hopefully it's almost obvious. So what Up allows us to do is give away everything we've built on the software side for free. We spent 2.5 years building a product that works very well at scale, services over 100,000 users. The UX is one of the best in consumer crypto. People really seem to be enjoying it. It seems to be fulfilling our original purpose, which is to convert like casual awareness about the league into real super fandom. So number one, Up allows us to give this software away to them for free in a sustainable way. Number two, it should allow us to easily share our users with them. So we said one of the motivations is getting users for them, but when you think about why they're going to join, they're going to be looking at our 100,000 plus players and saying, hey, can you like help us get a head start here and share many of those with us? And I think the answer is the way we're designing it, we can. And then lastly, with the eventual launch of a token for the Up network, we should have the capacity to actually give grants to some of these projects, right? Which, can really help throw kind of fuel on the fire. I think originally, like early on, maybe it looks more like a points program, like pre-token launch. And then eventually we're able to give real grants to real projects to onboard onto Up on the Gaming. So hopefully that value prop is good enough that we have a decent amount of inbound, but it also means we need to execute on marketing and BD as well.
Well, you guys have no problem executing on marketing. I think you're one of the best in the Web3 space. I will say that it's very rare that I'll hear a vision that, even if it sounds fantastic, it actually works on me, where I see it come to fruition and exactly what they wanted to see happen actually happens in my case. But creating a super fan is exactly what you've done with me.
Yeah.
I loved the sport from the beginning. When I first started seeing it, I'm like, this is filling that perfect niche, and it's been mentioned before, between boxing and MMA. But then once I actually participated in Up Only Gaming and got that little bit of skin in the game, got that incentive to do that little bit of extra research. That's what it was in the beginning when I had a few $1,000s in,
Yeah.
and I've just added since then, and it's just worked perfectly. I have become a super fan. Last week I was on vacation, and I don't want anybody to think that I was taking time away from my family. We were going through that hurricane. I was actually down in
Oh
Florida,
no.
and but it turned out fine. But 10 hours during one of those days, I was sitting there and doing research while my family was doing other stuff, just waiting for the storm to pass, on these different fighters. And I had a pretty successful outing this last time, but I'm completely on the edge of my seat for every single one of these events. And I think it can do the exact same thing for other sports as well. You've mentioned a little bit of this, but I'd like to do a deeper dive into how this benefits karate combat in itself, but also, how does this benefit Hedera, this layer two built on Hedera? I just wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive into those concepts.
Sure. So I think for Karate Combat, it's really about if you assume for a second that Up on the Gaming works, right? Then what you want to do is onboard as many people to it as possible to grow the sport as fast as possible, so we can build this UFC for striking, and we can go just that much faster. So I think that that's really the trick there. Obviously, the karate token holders have this additional incentive that they're can expect to get tokens from the Up network. But when you think about the sport itself, it's really about supercharging kind of the Up on the Gaming growth engine with real sports fans and esports fans and stuff like that. So I think that's the karate combat side of things mostly. That's the biggest part of it. You can also, frankly, this is a little bit more out there, but I think it will happen. There's a lot of things that you can build on top of Up Only Gaming. It's sort of like a new primitive in crypto. And we have lots of ideas for cool applications that can kind of be built on top of it by third party builders. Karate Combat itself, with one event a month, it may not be quite big enough yet for a developer to go and like kind of like spend all their time building an application on top of it. But if you can bring on tens of other projects, and there's up only gaming events every day using the same smart contracts, then it starts to make a ton of sense for people to build applications on top of it. I could give some examples. So Karate Combat's the only sport in the world where the athletes have any on-chain earnings, which is pretty interesting because that means someone could go and securitize that with an NFT or a fighter token. Also, right now, like Up on the Gaming is almost wholesome, right? You're winning a couple percent more tokens. You're not losing anything. There's a lot of people out there in the world that want to do things that are much more degen. Someone could build, we thought about this a lot actually this past week. Someone could build sort of like a swap so that they could lever up their Up on the Gaming. So they could pay a lender of karate a fixed return. Maybe they're paying kind of like it could be a fixed fee, right? Like a 1% a month fee. So they're paying out a fixed return in return to get a variable return. Basically, what they're doing is borrowing a bunch of karate for the chance to play it. And there's so many things like that. We put a bunch of examples into the article that we wrote. We also think some of the DeFi primitives themselves could be tweaked a little bit to just like embrace the culture of up on the gaming, like a DEX with like a sweepstakes feature or something. So that I think could be really meaningful. If there's additional ways to engage with up on the gaming that doesn't all need to come from the core team. You could even see someone like build a super app that kind of services all the up only gaming apps, or maybe someone wants to build a gambling platform on top of it, like that's just really easily plugged into all these things. So I think that's a big kind of non-obvious benefit of up. And then when when you go to the Hedera side of things, I think it's multiple. Right now, Karate Combat is I would say, very successful use case on Hedera. But wouldn't it be cool if there was 100 of us? So, and like we're really bringing an engine to make that happen by giving the software away for free, giving our users out, by giving grants and a new native token. And so we think we have this engine that can exist on top of Hedera to onboard 100 projects. And yeah, so I think that's the biggest benefit. When you look at the specifics of how the L2 is built, it pays all the fees in HBAR. It all settles to Hedera. It should onboard lots of users to the main chain. And then lastly, this was mentioned in the press release, but not talked. A couple things not talked about too much on socials. I didn't see. Number one, we've committed that 10% of the up supply will go to incentivize DeFi protocols on Hedera, staking to up, some HBAR weighted airdrops. So there should be like some nice goodies there. And then lastly is HStack, which I don't think I saw anyone talk about. Since we're going and building our own L2 on Hedera, there's some quirks to that. You can't just use off the shelf software. So since we're going and doing the work, we're going to open source that to allow anybody else that wants to launch an L2 on Hedera to do so very easily. Like right now on Ethereum, could like sort of almost like click a button and deploy an L2. And so the idea is to get it almost that easy on Hedera.
Good stuff. That's exactly what we want to hear. Now, using the up layer 2, you're going to be able to launch these tokens on other networks as well. So if there's a league or a sports team that wants to have up only gaming on their matches and they wanted to have it on Solana or on another network, they're going to be able to do that. How does that mechanism work, on top of this layer 2?
So I think the important thing there is that the UX that has made Karate Combat successful needs to be maintained. And so there's a decent amount of integration work that needs to happen. And it may be different for different networks, but from a user perspective, those users with tokens on Solana or whatever would be sending their tokens to their app. This is not the Karate Combat app, but it's a version of the Karate Combat app reskinned and changed for this project that lives on Solana. They would just be sending Solana tokens to a Solana wallet in that app. They'd press a button to play, and it was essentially like wrap and stake those tokens to up. So
Okay.
it'd lock them on the Solana side. Synthetic would be kind of minted on the upside.
Okay, I understand. That makes sense. So the next thing I want to touch on is you mentioned that karate token holders are going to benefit a fair amount from the initial launch of Up. They're going to get, from what I heard, 30% of the tokens. What does that mechanism look like of how they're going to get that 30% and over, what period of time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's over at least a few years. It's a huge chunk of supply. The exact mechanism is not decided yet. I think the ideal mechanism is actually through up only gaming. We'll see if we can pull it off because there's like some tax questions that need to be answered there specifically. But if not, some sort of like staking mechanism.
All right, so staying with karate token holders, because I have a lot of karate token holders that watch my show, how will karate token holders benefit from future up only gaming tokens that launch? I know there's going to be variable and it's going to be up to each team to see how much they want to benefit, but this kind of goes into how you share users, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really open question, and it'll be up to those projects. They won't like be required to, do an airdrop to karate token holders, but like, why wouldn't they, right? Like they're trying to onboard all these people. So you may have seen we have a questing module in the app already. It's not fully built out. We built it out for the season and per event rewards, and it's taking a little bit of a backseat to everything we're talking to today. But through that module, like any other project, will be able to like incentivize karate token holders to come over and play this new app, download and play the new app. And you would think they'd probably do that with tokens usually.
It's a great strategy. All right. So the last thing that I want to ask you is how does this look over the next, we'll say 8 months through H1 of 2025?
Yeah.
How is, karate combat and up going to work together to actually get this thing launched and get this thing moving?
Yeah, so everything's underway. The part that's really hard is maintaining the user experience to the level we have today. So we're also changing a couple big things about up on the gaming. First of all, we're moving from snapshot based to staking, which allows us to onboard users when an event is announced, and then all the way up to and including the event itself. So you'll be able to like buy tokens during the event, stake them and play, which is huge. It's like one of the biggest missing pieces here. It'll also allow us to vary the tokenomics so that long-term stakers, people who are on streaks, people who participate in governance can get increased vote weights inside the game itself. So you can kind of like encourage people to hold and play and all of that for higher rewards. That also allows us to in turn supercharge the affiliate program if we do it right, where people are staking to affiliates that have been like long-term players, and maybe like the 20% VIG kind of like washes itself out that way. And so like doing that all at the same time, maintaining the user experience as we move to the L2, it's a lot of work. Also cleaning up all our code to allow it to be like modular and shareable with other projects is a decent amount of work. So what we think we can do is kind of launch everything by the end of Q1, and then I imagine either in advance of the launch of the network or concurrent with it, we'll launch a points program and up to start to onboard a bunch of other projects, and then sometime next year we'll launch the token. That part, it'll really be dependent upon success. You only get to launch the token once. Ideally, you're launching it on kind of the biggest exchanges in the world. We've been through a token launch once already. We have a lot of lessons learned, and so that kind of token launch is not a rush.
All right. Well, I said that was going to be my last question, but I am curious about one more thing. And I know you're not going to be able to give details here, but what are the potential leagues that we could have on board here, or different teams that we could onboard here? I know you're not going to be able to give the exact team. We're not going to hear Manchester United or the NBA or a WNBA.
Yeah, and it's
here,
not going to be those guys up front. I don't think. I think when we started doing the research, one thing that was like immediately apparent based on the people who reached out to us is that the market is a lot bigger than it sounds like when you first hear about it. There's something like 60,000 sports leagues out there or something. And so that means there's probably like a million sports teams or something, right? And then there's esports, and there's fantasy sports apps, there's gambling apps, there's meme projects that maybe want to rerun hamster racing. And so I think the potential market size is just way larger than people like when they first hear the idea think about it. Like when they first hear the idea, they're like, oh, like are you really going to be able to get the NBA? Or like,
sure.
Well, probably not up front, to be honest, but it doesn't matter, right? We just need like, I don't know, 10 projects or something, right? Like, and then grow it to 100, So I think that it's going to be more niche sports, more kind of non-US sports, because there is a crypto angle here and people do have concerns about crypto in general. I think we'll get some esports projects, some meme coins, and it'll be pretty varied. And I think it'll be pretty good.
Well, I love the vision. I've been having a blast with Karate Combat. Again, congratulations on all the success you've had to this point. And again, thank you for building on Hedera.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I'm now posting these interviews of Hedera builders independently to my channel. The community, influencers, and media outlets are free to use this content to spread the word on what's being built on Hedera. Once they're all uploaded, you'll be able to go to my channel and search for whatever topic or team you're interested in to find more information. Or you'll be able to get the most recent Hedera news by watching the latest HBAR Weekly update. So check them out.